Well, hi there. I'm Arye Lynet, and I'm going to be doing something very special for this week's episode of my podcast. Often in an episode, you might have noticed this, but I'll mention a point and then I'll be like, but I'm not going to talk about this more because I think this really needs its own episode, or something along that line, which I've done a few times so far. And for the first time in the history of this podcast, I will be following up on one of those points. Yay! I finally managed to pick up a loose end. And this week's topic picks up from what I did in episode 3 of the podcast, which was my nostalgia binge surrounding British adverts and commercials. I mentioned at the start of it that I wasn't going to cover any Christmas adverts because I felt like it wasn't the right time to do it, and that maybe November would be a better time for that binge. Well, hello, November! So, this week I'll be trying my best to talk about some of my all-time favorite Christmas adverts, or just generally holiday-themed ads. I don't discriminate on this podcast. This is the perfect time to do this episode, as far as I'm concerned, because this is prime season for me. The start of November, which is when I planned to do this episode, but then I got some other ideas that I wanted to do first. And I also wanted to wait for this year's ads to come out, so that's why I'm saying start of November, because that's what my note says. But the start of November is Christmas advert season. That I can verify. Where every shop comes out with their big festive marketing campaign, and it is prime comparison fodder. You can't help but pit this retailer against this retailer and decide which of this year's crops of ads is the best one. And if that wasn't enough to get your baubles in a twist, you can even start comparing this year's ads for a certain shop or a couple of different shops with their festive ads from last year and the year before and the year before that. It's so much fun. And you might be thinking, this is a rather weird hobby, and we probably don't want you to talk about this. Well, to that I say, we all need hobbies right now. We're still in the midst of a global pandemic, just in case you forgot about that. And now the UK is also in lockdown again, just in case you also forgot about that. So, don't act like you don't need another hobby right now. I promise, it's fun. So before I go into the ads themselves, there might be a couple of people questioning my credentials for such a task. And I'll have you know, my credentials are impeccable for this task. For 2 years running, I wrote a column in my college newspaper counting down my favorite Christmas ads for the year. I don't remember if it was a top 8 or a top 10, but it was one of those two. And not only did I do a good job on it, but I also did such a good job that they let me do it again next year. I'm kidding. There weren't that many people writing for the paper, so it was pretty easy to get an article in there as long as you were a competent writer, which I think I was. But I had a ton of fun writing those, and now I get to do a podcast episode, which is basically like that, but one where I can put forth not my favourites of the year, but my favourites of all time. And that's even more fun because it weeds out the filler, and you just get the best ads. You're welcome. As with the last episode that focused on adverts, which was episode 3 of this podcast, if you haven't listened to it, that isn't required listening, but you probably should listen to it because it's a good episode. But this podcast does not have video, at least not yet. I'm kind of in the process of something of that nature, which you might know if you follow me on Instagram. So you will have to refer to the links in the description to see which ads I'm talking about if you want to watch them along the way. Unless you think you'll be fine with just my descriptions of the ads, but bear in mind I wasn't that good at that last time, so I doubt I'll be much good at it this time. But links to the ad are in the description either way, though if you've lived in the UK for a while or just the past few years, a couple of these will probably already be familiar to you. And if not, just like last time, consider this your education. An education on my favourite Christmas adverts of all time. And it's about time I introduced some of them. I'm only going to talk about the ones I want to talk about. So, over the past few years, as I've lived and gathered my thoughts on the Christmas ads of years past, I've realized some of the common threads within my favorite ads. And one certain category of Christmas ads that I can really appreciate is what I like to call the spiky ads. I didn't actually make up this term, but I think it's an awesome term that really covers this category of ads. Actually, the term was coined on the website christmasuk.org, which is one of my favorite websites for keeping up with the run up to Christmas. It features all the different ads that have come out, news about Christmas markets and catalogs. It's a great resource, and I'll link the website in the description of this episode, providing I remember that. But they were the first place where I heard spiky as a term for ads, and I've just ran with it. So, spiky ads are fun and punchy and a bit irreverent. They aren't about being emotional or traditional or even funny. They just show an exciting visual for Christmas. It doesn't necessarily have to dive into fantasy, it can just be a montage. But there's got to be good music, and it can't just be a regular Christmas song. Usually, the music doesn't really have anything to do with Christmas, it's just there to sound good. For this kind of ad, I have a few examples. The first one I have is an ad from House of Fraser, which is another department store here in the UK. And for 2 years, their ads definitely fit this bill. In particular, I'm going to focus on their second ad from 2016, because this is when I really started to get this style and really enjoy it. The ad has the tagline of "Christmas is coming for you," which I think is a great tagline as it's almost a bit forceful, like, all this shit's gonna happen whether you like it or not. It also fits the ad pretty well as it's a punchy message to go with a punchy ad. It's set to Laura Mvula's cover of Ready or Not by the Fugees, and her version of the song is pretty amazing. So often we have to suffer through slow and twinkly versions of songs in ads. That includes Christmas ads. So it's great to have a cover version of a song that has a bit of grit to it and a bit of force. Her voice is killer. It can be commanding at some points and then dreamier and more whimsical at other points. And this really fits the montage of these bold and eclectic scenes, which combine predominantly live action with a little bit of CGI, but it's mostly like live action with like CGI elements within. It feels more like a music video that's been so meticulously put together. It's glamorous, it's got a bit of sparkle to it, but it's also edgy. There's enough Christmas imagery to keep it relevant, which is important. You don't just want it to turn into a generic fashion ad. But it's stylized in a way that keeps with the theme. There's a ton of different scenes, and what's pretty cool about this ad is that it's filmed in widescreen, the like 16.9, not 16.9, the one that's like, uh, how do you describe it? The widescreen. I should that should be enough of a description for you. It's widescreen. But there are times where things will pop out of the aspect ratio, like above and below it, which I think is such a cool effect. Overall, I think it's pretty hard to describe like why I like it so much, and it's hard to describe overall everything because there are so many different scenes. So that's why I highly encourage you to visit the link in the description at some point to watch this ad because it is a real feast for the eyes. So this wasn't the first time that House of Fraser had done an ad in this style, and oddly enough, when their first ad premiered in 2015, I didn't really get it. I didn't really value it that much, and around this time, this was the first year I was in college, and this is when I did the first Christmas ads ranking. It didn't even make my top 8 list, whereas the 2016 ad was number 1 on the following year's list. Looking back on the 2015 ad, I think it's a great ad with an awesome soundtrack. But I still think the 2016 ad is better, even now. The scenes are more polished, and it feels more like a fully formed Christmas ad rather than just a regular music video. But this style of ad that House of Fraser was doing, it really impressed me, and I was looking forward to more of them. Fast forward to 2017. I'd left college and moved on to university. Seemingly enough, it looked like House of Fraser had also moved on to something new. Their ad that year was a much more traditional festive montage, and nothing like the last two Christmas ads. It was a real shame because I thought that that style that they'd cultivated over 2 years was a really great one. It was distinctive and interesting, and it brought something new to the table as far as Christmas ads went. But alas, they'd moved on to a more classic family slice of life, which as an ad can ring true, but it isn't particularly interesting or engaging from my perspective. Like, those types of ads come a dime a dozen, and as quickly as they get released, they get forgotten. But other retailers have done spikier ads before, and they've done them quite well. JD Sports has done this for quite a few years now, and though they don't really resonate with me as much because their brand isn't really my style, I still think their ads are visually engaging and fun to watch. More fun, in fact, than any experience I've ever had within a JD Sports store. Make of that what you will. But the truth is that punchier and more irreverent ads aren't always like the House of Fraser ads. They aren't always glamorous and set like a music video of sorts. Which, don't get me wrong, I will take all of your glossy music video style ads. I love those. Keep them coming. But sometimes the right music, the right tone, the right messaging, that can all make an ad for me. The perfect example of this, in my opinion, is the 2015 Asda Christmas ad. This was the ad that hit #1 on my 2015 best Christmas adverts list in college, and honestly, it was a pretty set choice for me. The ad is titled hashtag because it's Christmas, which as a title can go either way into pretty good or very, very bad and pandery and tired. Luckily, it lies in the former category, which is great. It's a montage of slices of family life during the holiday season, which sounds like a very by the numbers Christmas ad. But the thing that makes this is the editing and the soundtrack. Now, Sax by Flare East is a great song, and the way that the editing of the ad and the cuts between shots are all timed to the song with bold text captions, it makes this ad work so well. It's fun, but it's not cheesy. It's relatable, but it's not in your face pandering. It's upbeat, but it's still down to earth. It works so well in making regular old Christmas seem like an absolute blast. They had some follow-up ads featuring specific products because, supermarket's gonna supermarket, and they stuck to a similar formula, which made these ads still fun and nice to see. And then they also had this ad that was like a spin-off ad, which focused on one of the scenes within the main ad, the antlers on dog, where we got to see two dogs running towards each other in slow motion to Celine Dion. I know, it sounds lovely. It was a nice little detour in the campaign, while still having the same tagline. It was just a fun little ad, and I really enjoyed that too. Asda's 2015 Christmas ads really set the bar for me, and they've never reached that bar since. It is a shame, but it's mostly to be expected, as a lot of Christmas campaigns are just for that year. The next year, they'll do something completely different. At least that's the case for most larger retailers, as the festive season is a really big season retail-wise, and you can expect plenty of capital to be invested in their ad campaigns around this time. And when they cheap out, you can usually tell, but I honestly can't put my finger on the budget for 2015's ad, because the style and the editing just works. If it was a cheaper ad, they got great value. Unfortunately for me, spiky ads like the House of Fraser ads and the 2015 Asda campaign, these are few and far between. Most Christmas ads tend to lie in one of two categories, or at least they're intended to fall into one of those categories. And those are funny or emotional. These retailers are either going to make you laugh your face off or cry your eyes out. Or they'll do a little bit of both. Not all of these attempts work. Some of them just come across as cringy or incredibly unfunny, while others are just too obviously trying to go for the heartstrings and fall flat. There are also a lot of ads that just go for a more conventional, relatable slices of life at Christmas. And like I said earlier, those are a true reflection of Christmas, but not one that you'd remember for very long, because there are that many of them. This episode is all about the ads that I do remember, for good reasons, and other reasons. These ones have either made me laugh, warmed my heart, or just made me think, oh yeah, I like that one. Or maybe it's just a notable ad. You'll see. Let's start with a great ad from Walker's Crisps from 2019. If you didn't know, Walkers are the British equivalent of Lay's chips, and for their 2019 Christmas campaign, they got the Queen of Christmas herself to be in their ad. Yes, that's right. Mariah Carey was in the Walker's Crisps ad, and it was a big deal. Not just the ad, but like the fact that she'd be featured on bags of crisps. Like you'd go into Greg's and you'd see Mariah Carey on a bag of crisps. Like that was a big deal for the UK. But the ad was also a big part of it, and a great part of it. It starts with Mariah walking off set having filmed a classic festive performance and reaching for a bag of Walker's crisps, which she absolutely eats in real life. Just trust me on this. But an employee has grabbed the same bag. They argue over who should have the bag until Mariah fends him off with one of her signature whistle notes. She then takes a bite of her prize, possibly the smallest bite I've ever seen someone take of a crisp since records began. And I don't even know when those began, but I can guarantee this is the smallest bite. And honestly, She was paid £9 million to be in this campaign, and she barely nibbled that crisp, which is some icon energy, if I do say so myself. This ad got so much talk from the press and from Twitter, especially when she took that tiny minuscule bite out of the crisp. And that must have done absolute wonders for Walkers. I certainly enjoyed the campaign, and I think that £9 million was well spent. Worth every penny, in fact, because the Queen of the Lambs herself delivered an all-time favourite festive ad. But what do you expect? Mariah Carey always produces excellence in one way or another. My next favourite is probably the most controversial entry in this list, but I just had to put it in because it's the most weird Christmas commercial I've ever seen. And if I don't talk about it now, there's a good chance that some of you who will have never heard of this ad will never ever learn about this ad. And if there's one thing I want to do on this podcast, it's let you in to some of the weird shit that you just have to see. This is an ad for Mr. Kipling. And no, I'm not talking about the lizard from Jessie. I'm talking about the cake makers. Their whole brand is that they make exceedingly good cakes. And what I think they were trying to say with their ads is that even if Mr. Kipling doesn't do everything well, at least their cakes are excellent. But you're probably wondering, what exactly did they not do well? Well, they made a Christmas advert that a lot of people did not like. It starts with a woman giving birth in hospital. She's screaming in pain because, childbirth, and she's being told to push. Great start already. Then we cut to the full scene. This is not a real hospital, just a set of a hospital. And this is all taking place on stage. Because this is a nativity play. A very different nativity play with a live birth. Some guy is dangling a star overhead, and it's like, read the room. And I'm pretty sure the audience watching shares that same feeling. They're watching with an expression that I can only describe as, huh? As the woman continues screaming in pain. And the whole conceit of the ad, which is helpfully illustrated by some side characters, is that Mr. Kipling probably wouldn't make a very good nativity play, but he does make exceedingly good cakes. And it's like, well, that's one way of saying that. Oh, and by the way, the baby's a girl. So you might not be surprised to hear that this ad didn't go down well with some people. Some called it blasphemous. Some claimed that it was demeaning to women as it trivialized childbirth. Others just said, maybe my children shouldn't be watching this as it's a bit much for a Christmas ad. Now, I'm not sure which of these reasons was the one that caused them to pull the ad, because the company themselves, pulled the ad after a couple of weeks or days or however long it took people to get fired up about it. But either way, it got pulled. Goes to show that perhaps Christmas is not the time to push the boundaries. But thankfully, some nativities go down a lot better than others. And this is where I come to a Sainsbury's ad from 2018. This is an ad called The Big Night, and the one instance where I feel a retailer really got this style of ad right. It's a festive play featuring children, and it is so easy for any ad with children in it to end up coming off as too saccharine, too patronizing, too annoying to enjoy. But this one doesn't. It's actually got good emotional payoff, and it's likable. So allow me to set the scene. We start backstage as the kids hurriedly prepare for their show. One kid, the main kid, is dressed as a star and is the one who starts the show. It's a little girl, and she's clearly apprehensive as her mother watches her from the crowd. She starts singing the opening lines of You Get What You Give, quietly, stumbling a little, but, with a nod from her mother, she's encouraged to sing louder and give it her all. Then the curtain opens to reveal the rest of the kids in their costumes, as the performance really gets going. Kids dressed as baubles, Christmas cards, fairy lights, and probably the funniest thing in this whole ad, a plug. A plug that jumps into the giant socket on the wall. Then the little girl is raised in the air to the top of the Christmas tree to finish the song. There are sparklers, the atmosphere is electric, and it all finishes with a round of applause. So what I absolutely love about this ad is that it feels real. It doesn't feel like kids playing to the camera, which just would be so obnoxious, but like a real put together performance where the kids are performing for the audience that's in front of them, like the actual physical audience in the ad. The costumes feel realistically crafted as if kids had made them, but there's a sense of spectacle that elevates the whole product. It also helps that centering the ad around the little girl in particular helps the ad to have a message and to make the audience give a shit, so to speak. There's an emotional follow through that drives that spectacle even further because you're so happy about the fact that she's gotten through her nerves and she gets to be in this big production. And of course, I love Plug Boy. He's an icon, he's a legend, and he is the moment. Even if this ad was absolute horseshit, I'd still love Plug Boy. But it just so happens that this ad is pretty spectacular. Finally, before I go on to the mother of all Christmas ad phenomena, which I'm saving until the end, I'd like to shout out an honourable mention from the past few years of British Christmas advertising. Usually, festive advertising is a case of either making a new ad with a new theme and style every year, or reusing the same ad when you can't be bothered to make a new one, or you've run out of money. I won't judge. But what Aldi managed to do in 2016 was to take a character and feature him in 5 years worth of ads. And this is an original character. So, let's talk about Kevin the Carrot, arguably a national treasure. This is a CGI carrot who's a bit mischievous and irreverent, but also loves the magic of Christmas. And over the years, we've seen him find true love, face off against parsnips, and have little baby carrots. He's had its own merchandise, which has repeatedly sold out and caused many an uproar on Twitter. And he's become a bit of a phenomenon in himself. I honestly think the first couple of years of ads were the best ones because it wasn't as much of a spectacle. It was just him trying to get across the dinner table and finding danger on the way, which was pretty enjoyable. Then one year they had all the ads themed to The Greatest Showman with all the characters in costumes, and it was just all a bit tired and it didn't have that earnestness. I was actually surprised that they brought him back this year. I'd kind of assumed he'd reached his sell-by date, pun intended. But no, they brought him back this year, and they started things off with like a Top Gun parody scene, which I don't know. I don't really like when they try and put Kevin into like parody scenes and stuff like that. That being said, the turkey that was in that ad was pretty great. Just a really cool turkey. Sometimes I appreciate a cool turkey. Either way, I think what works about Kevin the Carrot is that he's down to earth and relatable. So putting him in all these different costumes and big spectacle is just defeating the charm for me, which is that it's a carrot that gets his back caught in the grater and has his stem caught on fire. All things that could happen specifically to a carrot. Whereas, why would you dress a carrot in a top hat? I hope I'm making sense with this, Rand. I'm not trying to CinemaSins the logic of sentient carrots, but I think if you're going to have a carrot, I like that perspective, the unique perspective of a carrot and what a carrot goes through, much more than carrot in place of a human doing human things. Do you know what I mean? Right, that was a very pedantic rant, and I know I've done quite a few pedantic rants in my time on this podcast, but this one might have just topped the list. Nonetheless, I still really like Kevin the Carrot. I think it's given Aldi a prime place in Christmas advertising and helped Aldi continue to cultivate their image as a likable and slightly irreverent supermarket. It wasn't the first time they'd done fun ads like this, but it's a series that a lot of people enjoy, and it's been, dare I say, a bit of a cash cow for Aldi. So it doesn't surprise me that this carrot has had a long-term position in the company's advertising, even if it isn't that common for advertisers to have recurring Christmas mascots. If you are listening from the UK, you're probably wondering why I haven't addressed a certain series of Christmas ads from a certain chain of department stores. And that is because I have saved it until the end of the episode. Speaking of which, if you're familiar enough with British culture, you might be aware of the most famous series of Christmas adverts, and the ones that have really made Christmas adverts as big of a deal as they are. I'm talking, of course, about the John Lewis Christmas advert. In 2018, they changed their name to John Lewis and Partners, but no one fucking calls them that, so neither will I. John Lewis is a chain of big department stores, usually located in big cities. I don't live in a city, so I would have to go an hour north to my nearest one. I have also never bought anything from John Lewis in my life. Maybe that's just a me thing, or it's something specific within my family, but they're just one of those stores that's just there and you don't ever really buy stuff from. But their big thing is that they do every year a Christmas advert, and everyone pays attention to that. Whether they give a shit about John Lewis for the other 10 months of the year, people do give a shit about the Christmas advert because it is an event. Over the years, these ads started to get more and more attention, and now they're the ones that people get excited over. There's speculation, there's always a bunch of people making actual bets on who'll do the music. That's not a lie. And many people think that the launch of the ad signifies the real start of the UK holiday season. And it's encouraged every other retailer out here to go big with their ads and make the most exciting, most heartwarming, most tear-jerking ads possible to compete with John Lewis. Some of them succeed, but quite a few of them fail. Now, with these John Lewis adverts, there tends to be a formula in play. Get a song and have someone do a slowed down cover of it. Have something to do with Christmas tie into it, particularly near the end. And the most important one, have it be emotional. We want tears at the dinner table. Often they'll do something to do with families and connecting loved ones, or they'll introduce some kind of cute character as part of it, and then they'll make merchandise of that cute character because they'll know it works. However, they do it, and whatever they include in the ad, it's engineered to have that emotional punch. Many people cry at these ads. It's not special if you do that. Everyone has their favorite one. It's become a full-blown tradition to follow these ads, compare them, talk about them, and speculate about what they'll do next. So, what exactly are these ads? So, today I'll be going through the ads right now, and I'll probably elaborate on the ones I like the most. So, first of all, 2007 to 2010, their ads, I can't remember for the life of me, other than the fact that 2010s had Ellie Goulding's version of Your Song, and that's where that cover version comes from. They kind of were the ones before the John Lewis advert became a thing, and they're also the ones that no one really talks about. And I don't really find them that noteworthy, so I'm not talking about them either. So that's why they're the outliers here. But things really get going in 2011 with the release of probably the first in the big hitters in the John Lewis adverts, and that is The Long Wait. The ad features a young boy impatiently counting down the days till Christmas, all through the month of December, till he goes to bed on Christmas Eve. Then, on Christmas morning, we find out that he wasn't really that excited for his presents, but he was excited to give his parents a present. That's what he'd been waiting for this whole time. I mean, from the perspective of someone who was a young boy, I never experienced this feeling because I was always too unsure about what my parents wanted for Christmas, because they never ever told me, and I had to guess, which, by the way, still do have to do that. So, my confidence with buying gifts for my parents is non-existent. I didn't care that much for this ad when it came out, but I was pretty insufferable in 2011 and I did not like kids enough to appreciate this ad. I still don't really like kids, but nowadays I think it's a nice ad. I think it's done really well. It's not throwing sadness in your face, and though I don't love the prospect of sulking children on my television, I think this has just the right amount of chintz to not make it completely saccharine. Next, let's go on to 2012, which is not the end of the world, but when we are introduced to a very determined snowman in The Journey. This is a live action snowman who is seen traversing landscapes to find the perfect gift for his true love, Mr. Snowman. Though I didn't love this ad in 2012, I've really grown to like it. I really like the techniques used and the fact that it's like a still snowman in every shot, and only the story and the cuts indicate that he's moved. Almost like a weeping angel, where you never see it move most of the time. It just cuts to them in a different position. That being said, I'd much rather face the snowman than a weeping angel. I'd much rather face most things than a weeping angel. They're bloody terrifying. And the music, which is a cover of Frankie Goes to Hollywood's The Power of Love, still gives me chills. It feels very, very wintry, and it goes with all the snow in the ad. This one I would call a sleeper hit because I didn't really appreciate it in its time, but now I think it's great. 2013 was the first animated ad from John Lewis, and it's a hand-drawn animated ad called The Bear and the Hare. This features a bear that's about to go into hibernation, but his friend, the hare, is sad that the bear will miss Christmas, which is what all of the other forest animals are preparing for and they're so excited about. The hare gives the bear a gift, which turns out to be an alarm clock. This wakes up the bear just in time for him to see the Christmas tree, all finished. And from what we can see, the bear thinks it's beautiful. I know there are liberties that are taken in terms of the way hibernation works, but it's cute and it's animated and it's Christmas, so I can suspend my disbelief, even if it is for like 2 minutes. This was my favorite one for a while, though I think the fact that it was like 2D animated in that classic style definitely clouded my judgment. I still like it a lot though, and Lily Allen did the music, so what's not to love? In 2014, we got to meet Monty the Penguin. We see a young boy living his best life with his best friend Monty, who happens to be a penguin. We see them do all sorts of fun stuff. But we also see that Monty is sad. He's seeing people in love, and he wants to find that. He's looking at couples wistfully on benches by the sea. He's looking down on couples. He looks down on a lot of couples. That's the recurring theme of the ad. When he's on the bus, yeah, he's sad. He wants a love. He wants true love. But soon his human friend or owner, depending on however you want to see that friendship, I don't know, catches on and gives Monty the Christmas gift he's been waiting for, a girlfriend. It's another penguin. And before all of those questions of autonomy and consent flood in, we cut back and realize that both of the penguins were plush toys the whole time, and he'd imagined the story. Oh my goodness. In 2014, I thought the 2013 ad was better, but now I think that this one's a little better. It's just the quintessential John Lewis ad with a cute character and a lot of emotional resonance. I also remember a ton of parodies of this one where people would dub over the audio and make the penguin say all sorts of shit. Like, the penguin didn't talk in the original ad, but people used that silence and used it to make the penguin say a lot of um, not safe for work stuff. Like, there was like the Glasgow version or the Geordie version. I'm pretty sure this was probably the not where the first parodies came out, but where the parodies really started. And every year you'd get a few parodies of the latest John Lewis ad. Not all of them would be very good though. In 2015, we learned about the struggle of the man on the moon, a lonely old man who lives in a house on the moon. And I'm not even going to question any of the physics of that because I don't have the energy. It's a lot of physics to question. But a little girl notices him and decides to get him a gift so that he can feel less alone. This gift is a telescope sent to the moon via a ton of balloons, up style, and this lets the old man be able to observe the world with a better view. It's got a great message relating to the loneliness that the elderly can experience, and I'm pretty sure they actually partnered with A2UK on this ad, and it's a great message and a very relevant one for the holidays. However, when this ad got released, everyone and their grandma made the same damn pedo jokes, and honestly, if I were John Lewis, if I was in that marketing team's room, I probably should have expected that. An older man watching a little girl through a telescope. Yeah, just saying that, you can see the implications. I still think the ad is really well made and not genuinely problematic in any way. I just think it didn't land the way it was supposed to. 2016 was the turn of Buster the Boxer. Dog lovers got to see this lovable boxer watch his owner, a little girl. There are lots of children in these ads, you'll see the theme. But this little girl bouncing on a sofa. We see that this dog really likes bouncing. We then see that her father is building a trampoline in the backyard for her, not for the dog. I thought I should just clarify that. During the night, a gang of photoreal CGI animals got to take the first bounce on the trampoline as Buster watches in jealousy. Morning comes and the young girl wakes up, goes downstairs, and marvels at her special gift. As she makes her way to the trampoline, Buster gets there first and bounces to his heart's content. I remember a lot of people saying that this ad wasn't sad enough when it came out, but like, John Lewis ads don't have to just be sad, they just have to be emotionally resonant. And since 2016 was a bit of a tough year for a lot of people, that was the year where everyone died, I can see why they went for a more positive ad. And I think this works well. It's a good ad and I like it a lot. But 2017's ad is one of my personal favorites. Moz the Monster is a big furry navy blue monster who lives under the bed of a young boy. At first, the boy is scared, but then they become fast friends and they spend their nights playing games. However, this makes the boy tired during the day, so Moz decides he has to do something to help. On Christmas morning, the boy finds a badly wrapped gift that the parents are baffled by. It's a nightlight, and when the boy turns it off, he finds that Moz is gone. He sacrificed himself to give the boy a good night's sleep. I'm sorry, I'm tearing up a bit. But don't worry, if the boy turns off the nightlight, Moz will come back. I really love this ad. It definitely made me a bit emotional, especially on the second viewing when I knew what was going to happen. I think the story is solid, the music really sets up the atmosphere, and the techniques that they used for Moz were really effective. They only really used CGI on the face, and they went practical for like the body and the rest of him. It got some blowback because people thought the last scene was a cop-out that weakened the sacrifice. And also there was a bunch of assholes complaining about the fact that the child was black with a mixed-race family, to which I would like to punch every single one of those people in the face. Here's a fun fact, because apparently people still need reminding of this. Not everything has to be about white people. End of story. And then finally, there was also talk of an author claiming that the ad was plagiarized from his work, which I'm not sure if I agree with that. I haven't read his book, but there's that if you're curious. That's a rabbit hole. So, as of 2017, Moz the Monster was my favourite John Lewis ad. Would 2018 top it? Spoiler alert, it didn't. 2018's ad was an ad about Elton John's life, working in reverse all the way back to his childhood when he received a piano as a gift. It breaks the formula of the traditional John Lewis ad, and it's technically well made, but I didn't really care for this ad a great deal. It just felt kind of too self-congratulatory and a bit promotional, considering that Rocketman was going to be released that next spring. Not offensively bad, just overwhelmingly meh. So, what would 2019 bring? A favourite? Excitable Edgar was the first time that John Lewis would share his Christmas ad with supermarket Waitrose, who are both part of the same company, and they figured that the Waitrose ads weren't that interesting or doing very well, so they decided to merge them together, probably, I think. Maybe budget cuts. Probably budget cuts. But this ad featured yet another cute, marketable character for John Lewis to make toys out of. Yes, this trope is cynical and very overused in this series, but I can make a pass for this one because Edgar the Dragon is so well animated. Like, I'm very impressed. He's fully CGI in an old-timey English village where he's best friends with a little red-headed girl. But Edgar has a bit of a problem. He gets so excited about Christmas that he ends up burning stuff with his nose fire. He shoots fire out of his nose. He melts an ice rink with children in it, melts a snowman, and even sets the village Christmas tree on fire. This makes him the ire of this provincial village. Can you tell I've been inspired by Beauty and the Beast? And he runs back to his house in shame. Yes, this dragon has a house, just go with it. But his little red-headed girl's sidekick decides to give him a gift that will lift his spirits. She leads Edgar into the huge dining room with all the village inside, presumably. I don't know how this hierarchy works. They're all scared to see Edgar because, he shoots fire out of his nose, which could potentially kill them. But then he presents a Christmas pudding and lights it with his nose. It's cute. Cue the applause. This is supposed to be heartwarming, but then you just see this one shot of this man looking at Edgar with such contempt, and it's like, fine, we'll let you sit at the table. And this has some weird implications. Like, you will only be accepted if your abnormalities can be controlled and or used for the benefit of others. Poor Edgar. Part of me wants him to commit arson on this whole village for mistreating him, but I know he's too pure for that. So I love this little guy, and I definitely invite him to my Christmas dinner, mostly because he's cute, and the CGI is really, really exceptional. I can't state that enough. The animation on him is just top tier. I really love it. It's also just aesthetically pleasing as an ad. You've got the costumes and that old village aesthetic. It's a lot of brown, but it works, and especially contrasting with the green. We love color theory here. The music is effective, though the vocals can be a tad abrasive at times. One thing I love is that the musical stop and start with the narrative, which I don't think John Lewis ever really did with the other adverts. I think that's pretty neat. With that, I can confidently say that Excitable Edgar is one of my favourite John Lewis ads. So, since we've looked at all the past John Lewis ads, we may as well cover this year's ad because I recorded this late for a reason. It's quite different from the others since it revolves around multiple storylines instead of one, and it features an original song instead of a cover version. But the best thing about the Give a Little Love ad is the medium. Instead of contracting one studio to create the ad, they instead contracted 8 different studios to put forth different scenes for the ad. So there's a blend of live action, watercolor style 2D animation, stop motion, and 3D animation in a ton of different styles. That is my favorite thing about this ad. They didn't just do this for stylistic reasons, which, I mean, would be really cool for an ad, But they did it so that multiple studios would get employment for the ad, since 2020 has been a rough year for, well, the vast majority, including animation studios and animators who might have struggled to get work during the pandemic. The message in the story is a little weaker because it isn't as focused on the story, but rather the switching of the visual style. But it works well enough. I still think, I know I'm complaining and nitpicking, it would have been even better with just the one storyline while still keeping that switching of the visual styles. But I'm not in charge of their ad department, so there's not much I can do about that. I do have two issues with the ad that are more minor. First of all, that one girl with the red hair has this weird hairstyle that's just a war crime. I've never seen a kid with that hairstyle, and for good reason, because it's not a cute hairstyle for anyone. The other thing is that though the music is nice and the singer has a nice voice, sometimes it gets into the territory of indie girl voice, or seal singing in the word of Liz Gillies. It sounds like she's singing Give a Little Larve, which just grates on me so much. It's not like detrimental to the ad, and I don't hate it because of it, but it kind of takes me out of it when it sounds like Aidan Gallagher's doing the music. But either way, it's a noble effort from John Lewis, and nowhere near a meh. I still like the ad. So, top three John Lewis ads for me are Monty the Penguin, Moz the Monster, and Excitable Edgar. We see a recurring theme. I like cute CGI creatures put into the live action setting. I know I'm contributing to their complacency. I am a part of the problem, but I stand by my choices. Of course, people are always going to argue on whether this year's ad is as good as the other ones, which is a valid topic, but for me, a much more interesting topic, at least I think, is the massive impact that they've had on festive advertising, period. Because the truth is, though the John Lewis ad is just one of the many different festive ads that comes on screen nowadays, it might just be the one that's made Christmas advertising what it is. Other brands will have seen the ads and the buzz around them and thought to themselves, I want a piece of that pie, or Christmas pudding, if you prefer. I don't really like either of them. This led to all of these big budget efforts from supermarkets and department stores and food brands and everyone that can advertise. If a company can do an advert, it would do something around the holiday season to try and compete with John Lewis. All of that stuff I said in the intro about pitting retailers against retailers and complaining, not complaining, and comparing. There we go, I got my word right. And comparing the flood of festive ads that come out every year. I'm getting passionate. Chances are that wouldn't be a mainstream topic if it weren't for John Lewis. Sure, some people would compare them and like analyze them, and that probably would include me because I'm a sado. But the fact that these ads become trending topics from like the person down the road as well talking about it, and they get so much capital poured into them, that's not just because the holidays are an important shopping season, but because John Lewis made the holiday season prime time for putting a best ad forward. So, I'm out of breath. It feels fitting to finish this episode with their ads. It feels like a nice way to round it off. And now we come to the end of our journey. If you want some more holiday themed episodes, I do have an idea for one coming later on down the line, so stay tuned for that in a few weeks. If you don't want to hear a damn thing more about the holidays, then good news, I also got plenty of other things planned for this podcast. As always, if you like this episode, feel free to subscribe to the podcast for more fun rants and rambles. And if you didn't like this episode, well, I talk about something different every week, so if you didn't like this one, you might just prefer next week's. So subscribe anyway. There are very few reasons why you shouldn't. Unless you're a Nazi, a Trump supporter, or a TERF. Then run, because I'm gonna fucking eat you for breakfast. At least I think I would. If you are a decent human being by any chance, then feel free to stick around. You can leave a review or a rating, depending on what platform you're on. And if you can't, don't worry, just share it instead. That's basically a review in itself, right? And if you want to talk to me about anything in this episode, or anything you think I might have missed, or question why the hell I think anyone gives even a whisper of a shit about any of this, my DMs are open. I'll leave my YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter in the description. I will also leave links to christmasuk.org and to the various ads I've talked about in today's episode in the description, just in case you finally decided to watch the damn things. Here's hoping. As always, thank you so much for listening and putting up with my voice for 40 odd minutes. I'm eternally grateful. And until next time, keep trying your best, everyone. Bye for now.